Top Story with Tom Llamas is your news playlist on NBC News Now. And now, you can listen to it as a podcast, available anytime and anywhere.
To stand on the edge of the cliff and jump takes a lot of guts. We are meeting people one after the next who have made profound changes. I think you're going to be blown away by the life lessons.
Listen to Making Space Now, wherever you get your podcasts.
We've heard a lot about supply chains and shortages in the last few years. Well, Russia's war in Ukraine is making it harder to get a number of things, from cars to medical equipment to even helium. Now, we've had helium shortages before, but it's not hard to see how much more useful this gas is besides filling party balloons. Helium is key to electronics manufacturing. You need it to make computer chips. Liquid helium is critical to spaceflight. Last month, an executive for SpaceX told CNBC its launches will cost more, partly because of this gas. It's one of the reasons it's raising prices. Helium is also used to cool down MRI machines. And according to the Miami Herald, the Miami-Dade Police Department uses helium to analyze drug samples. These days, the department says it's paying $1,800 per tank. And officials say that led them to take some of their drug testing machines offline. So where do we get helium from? And how do we address this shortage? Let's get into that with Phil Kornbluth, president of Kornbluth Helium Consulting. Mr. Kornbluth, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Joshua. Thanks for having me on your show. So,
how is it that we have a shortage of the second most abundant element in the universe? How does that work? Why is helium in short supply?
Okay, well, helium that's used commercially is produced as a byproduct of natural gas processing and LNG production. And, not all of the natural gas that's produced in the world has commercially recoverable concentrations of helium. So it's relatively scarce on Earth. And there are only 15 large liquid helium plants in the world. 7 of them are in the U.S., 8 of them are outside of the U.S. There is helium in the atmosphere, but it is such a small concentration of the atmosphere that it's not economically viable to recover helium from the air.
How is the war in Ukraine affecting these supplies? Are there specific impacts from this war, or is it kind of generalized supply chain disruption?
Well, actually, Joshua, there was a pretty severe shortage of helium that started before the war in Ukraine. And the biggest factor in the shortage, it coincidentally has something to do with Russia, because Gazprom was planning to bring on a very, very large new helium source in Siberia called the Amur project. And after briefly running that project for a few weeks in September, they experienced a fire in October. They had an explosion and a fire in early January. And that plant, which was going to bring on a lot of new supply in 2022 and actually take us out of the era of recurring shortages, that plant is now out of the picture because of those fires and the explosion throughout all of 2022. Now, the interesting thing about the war in Ukraine is, well, the war in Ukraine has had a little bit of an impact in the short term, but the bigger impact of the war is that it's going to take a lot longer to restart the plant in Russia, because it will be difficult for foreign experts to travel to Russia to work on the plant, and it'll also be difficult to obtain spare parts, replacement parts, and equipment that are sourced from Europe or America.
Give me an example of where the everyday person who is not trying to fill up party balloons will actually notice the shortage of helium. Where might it affect our lives, perhaps in ways we might not necessarily think of?
Well, that's actually a tough question, because I think, helium is primarily not a consumer good. The place where, the average person interacts with helium is party balloons. If they go get balloons at the party store, they might not be able to get balloons because they're out of helium, or the party balloons might cost more. Clearly, MRI is probably the biggest application for helium, along with semiconductor manufacturing. And I would bet that most people who undergo MRI scans don't realize that liquid helium is cooling that magnet that is at the guts of an MRI scanner to superconducting temperatures. It's a superconducting magnet. So probably MRI would be the place where it would impact the average person. And other than that, the price of helium has gone up, and it's another factor that contributes to the high inflation environment that we are experiencing right now.
As I understand it, there are certain strategic reserves, like there's a U.S. reserve of helium, as I understand it, but there's trouble accessing it. There's some kind of damage or repairs that need to be done. What's the prospect for getting that fixed so that can be tapped?
Well, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, that's part of the Department of the Interior, they actually operate. They are the operator for the Federal Reserve, which is near Amarillo, Texas, and they also operate a pipeline system that delivers helium from the Federal Reserve to 4 helium purification and liquefaction plants that are located in Oklahoma and Kansas. And that plant, the BLM's plant, it's called the Crude Helium Enrichment Unit, but basically it's a purifier. That plant has been down since mid-January, and that is greatly reducing the amount of feed gas to those 4 liquid helium plants and taking a pretty large increment of supply out of the market, a 10% plus increment. So that's another significant factor in the current shortage. Now, the good news, hopefully, is that the BLM's Crude Helium Enrichment Unit is expected to restart sometime between May 1st and June 1st. So if things go according to plan, we will get that supply back into the market, and that should provide some relief for the shortage in the second half of the year. Now, I'm not saying the shortage is going to end, but I think expectations are that it will be a little less severe after the BLM restarts their plant.
Phil Kornbluth of Kornbluth Helium Consulting. Appreciate you making time, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, Joshua. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you for making time for us. Remember to keep an eye out for part 2 of our pot equity series. Morgan Radford brought you part 1 last night, focused on New Jersey. Next week, we head to California and Massachusetts, where equity applicants have been in business there for years. Part 2 airs on Wednesday. Do share your stories about how the push for pot equity has affected you. Feel free to email us, leave us a voicemail, or reach out on social. But until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. Look forward to hearing more of your stories, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Tonight, the major arrest in the brutal murder of a mother in New York City. Her handyman and alleged lover confessing to stabbing her more than 55 times inside of her Queens home and then stuffing her body into a duffel bag, dragging it around her neighborhood. Her 13-year-old son home at the time. What we're learning about the murder weapon and the final moments leading up to her death. State of emergency. The wildfire exploding in size in northern Arizona. Dozens of homes destroyed and thousands evacuated. Firefighters struggling to fight it as dry conditions and high winds fuel those flames. Also tonight, the dangerous journey for thousands of unaccompanied minors trying to enter the U.S. from Mexico. The 2-year-old boy from Honduras found alone at the border with nothing but his birth certificate, and the teenager drowning in the Rio Grande as he tried to cross with his sister, who was then taken into custody. The emotional interview tonight with their heartbroken mother, who is now without both her children. Flight Beatdown, the new video showing Mike Tyson repeatedly punching another passenger on a Florida-bound flight from San Francisco, what allegedly caused the famous heavyweight boxer to start swinging. Drugging the guests? New police body cam footage capturing the moment officers in Florida arrived at a wedding after the food was allegedly laced with marijuana. Some guests taken out on stretchers. So who did it? Well, the bride and the wedding caterer now facing felony charges after attendees say they were not told about the hidden high. And plane crash on purpose? The YouTuber accused of intentionally crashing a plane into a national forest in California. Top story starts right now. And good evening. An alleged affair turned deadly. Tonight, the arrest in the brutal murder of a New York City mother, ending a days-long manhunt for the killer. The NYPD says 44-year-old David Bonola confessed to stabbing Ursula Gall more than 50 times inside of her Queens home while her teenage son was upstairs. Police say he was the family's handyman and is believed to have been romantically involved with Gall for at least 2 years. Surveillance video showing what police say is Bonola rolling a bag with her body through her neighborhood last Saturday before dumping it on the side of the road. The NYPD also releasing a photo of the suspected murder weapon, this large kitchen knife found at the scene. Tonight, her neighbors breathing a bit easier after the chilling crime sent shockwaves through the community of Forest Hills. Our Zincle Esamwa is there and leads us off tonight.
Here he comes.
Tonight, just days after the gruesome murder of a Queens mother, the suspect is in custody.
David Bonola is a 44-year-old handyman who walked out of the doors of this Queens, New York police precinct, now charged and arrested with murder, criminal tampering, and criminal possession of a weapon.
Bonola giving incriminating statements to police about the murder of Rochalia Gall, 51, and a mother of 2. Worried community members learning of his arrest Thursday.
The suspect has been found.
I didn't know that.
You hope that that's the end of it. There was one person involved and it wasn't more complicated than that.
Authorities saying at a press conference it wasn't a random attack.
This stemmed to be a domestic type dispute that they were having.
On Thursday, authorities saying at a press conference Bonola and Gall had an on and off affair for 2 years. Police say Bonola did work at the Gall residence, adding he was known to the family. Authorities say the two had broken up but reunited in early April. And Saturday, something went sour.
On Friday night, April 15th, Miss Gall attends a show at Lincoln Center. She takes the train back to her neighborhood in Forest Hills. At 11:20 p.m., she stops in a local establishment for a short while before returning home.
That establishment was the Forest Hills Station House.
She was here on Friday and right in the center of the bar, had a Moscow Mule.
Gall returning to her home around 12:20 a.m. on Saturday. Her husband and oldest son out of town for a college visit, while her youngest son was in the house upstairs, according to police. Authorities say between 12:30 and 12:40 a.m., Bonola, with access to the house, entered.
A heated argument ensues between the two in the basement. A knife is brandished. A violent struggle ensues.
Police suspect it was this knife found at the crime scene used to fatally stab Gall over 50 times. Then neighborhood surveillance video showing a shadowy figure seen hours later rolling a duffel bag, leaving a trail of blood on the sidewalks. Inside that bag were Gall's remains, found around half a mile from the home by someone walking at a major cross street.
Any information on why he dragged the body out?
We believe he just didn't want it to be found by the family.
Do you feel safer now that he's in custody?
Without a doubt. I think we've all been a little scared at night. This family will never be the same. And I think this block will never be the same.
Truly sad what that family is going through right now. Zincle Esamwa joins us now live from the scene of the crime there. So Zincle, we understand that the alleged suspect here who's been arrested made incriminating statements to police after voluntarily going with them for questioning.
That's right, Tom. So Bonola had no prior arrests, but when he was taken in for questioning, he made incriminating statements. Among those, he admitted to being the person who sent those threatening texts to Gall's husband. You'll remember those said, "Your whole family is next." So really disturbing details today, but a little bit of closure for the community, Tom.
All right, Zincle Esamwa leading us off tonight. Zincle, thank you for that. We want to move down to Arizona, where officials have declared a state of emergency in the massive wildfires burning near Flagstaff. Thousands have evacuated and dozens of structures are now destroyed. The inferno entering its 5th day as dry conditions and heavy winds fuel its growth. NBC National correspondent Miguel Almaguer is there with you.
Exploding across more than 30 square miles, fanned by epic and relentless winds, Flagstaff's tunnel fire showing no mercy overnight as thousands flee the flames and dozens of structures are lost.
All the houses that I've seen that were there earlier, 45 minutes earlier, except for one, were all burned to the ground.
With crews fighting a losing battle and facing a ballooning fire, the inferno is poised to race into more forest land. The biggest wind threat likely coming tomorrow as smoke smothers the region.
The forecast is just for continued winds for the next few days. This fire season is going to be long, and longer.
As 9 major wildfires torch Arizona and New Mexico, 50-mile-an-hour winds across the region are kicking fire season off to a fast and furious start. The acreage burned nationally so far, already 30% higher than average.
I cried driving away because you just don't know. You don't know if you're going to come home to anything.
And tonight in Arizona, with plenty of fuel in this fire's path, there is now a growing sense of misery in its wake.
All right, Miguel joins us now from Arizona Live tonight. So, Miguel, what's the latest on the number of homes that have been threatened by this fire? And is there any sign, we just heard there the last part of your report there, but is there any sign of any type of containment anytime soon?
Well, Tom, we know tonight at least 800 homes in this general area remain under threat, and thousands of people are out of those homes. As for the fire, containment remains at 0%, which essentially means any direction the fire is moving, it remains unchecked. And it's these whipping winds that are really the problem. Tom, this fire could make a major run in one direction and simply with a strong gust of wind, completely turn around and move in the opposite direction. Tom?
Firefighters, they're up against so much. All right, Miguel, we thank you for that. For more on the dry and windy conditions fueling this raging fire, I want to get to meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, so walk us through the next couple of days over there.
Yeah, hi there, Tom. Well, we have a threat tomorrow, and it's an extremely critical risk. We don't hear that often from the Severe Prediction Center, but we have all the ingredients, quite literally, for a recipe for disaster. And the big concern will be for an outbreak of wildfires. Let's take a look at what we're expecting tonight and then that expansion tomorrow. So we are looking at red here. That's your critical risk. That's Amarillo to Lubbock, also Raton. And we're looking at winds gusting to 40 miles per hour as we go throughout the rest of today. Tomorrow, though, we're going to see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Even some spots in northern New Mexico could see winds gusting up to 80 miles per hour. So any fire